It's so hot here, so sorry for my shining face, but anyway, in 2022 people ask a lot about this topic. What makes game a indie game? And we can tell typically response that indie game is made by the small developer, independent, and that's it, and finish and see you later. But
Not really, though.
in just basic terms, indie productions means that small group, single person, studio choose to create a game and publish it on the market without reaching publisher, but publisher can reject a project that creators work a lot of time on it, or even if they accept and then release your game, still you will get a small cut of the entire income that your work made. To really understand what indie games are now, we need to learn some history about them. Indie games term started being in use like from early 2000. But of course, small games and programs were made by creators or independent creators much earlier, like even in 70s or 80s. To be honest, every big company today somehow started from the guy sitting in the garage and creating small games projects. But 20 years ago, back from today, things were started to grow. What's going to happen if you start making profit?
You'll make more money.
And exactly this is what happened back in early 2000 to companies that today are giants. Infamous Electronic Arts, Ubisoft, and more started making more cash because having PC or console to play games was gaining more popularity. More people started getting their interest around gaming, games production, or being developer at all. And with this, more titles were sold every day, making profit in overall. So companies did what they had to do, and they invested money in more production possibilities for making better titles that people want. Then huge companies saw that they need to start making even more money, because people demand better productions with much more content. So, for example, famous The Elder Scrolls Oblivion gets the first DLC with infamous paid horse armor. Back then, that was a huge shock for industry, but companies have huge money making possibilities.
Blinded by their greed, they took them without question.
And people started to realize that these fun-loving studios are showing their greedy side, which was also a problem for next years. After end of first decade, something snapped. Part of it was the giant crisis from 2008, and second was people who were demanding more, bigger, better titles. But at that time, giants or giant companies were searching for ways to increase profit, cutting costs. And at that time, everything was kinda cool. For example, in 2011, The Elder Scrolls Skyrim was released, which was a huge thing. But with next year's greediness overcoming entire industry, we are now in place where we have 15 releases of Skyrim from 2011. And still, after this time, we don't even have a single gameplay of The Elder Scrolls 6. In 2002, were two guys who made quite big game, and there was Edwin Macmillan and Tommy Refenis, who created Super Meat Boy, fun but challenging platformer who was hit back then, which we can make as a mark on map that it was start in the games industry to showing up and taking part of the entire cake for itself. Then through next 2 years there were many small productions released, and some of them were getting attention, some not, but in comparison to today's standards, how much indie games are released every year, it was like
Drop in the ocean.
in 2012 there was huge two games, indie games of course. First was PES, then later FTL, which was popular even years later. PES success was quite huge, and the game was created by a small developer team, where in later years controversial Phil Fish was the face of it. PES was an aesthetic puzzle platformer with a mix of 2D and 3D dimension, which was cool, and from that moment, like huge wave of people who want to create small but fantastic productions started rolling over. With years, making games began being easier and faster for small teams or even single person, which more and more small productions happened to appear on the market. The downside of this was that more and more crap or rip-offs were showing to grab a quick few bucks. Then there was a movie called Indie Game The Movie, where many small developers said few things from themselves. It was a documentary about small and ambitious developers who created games that hundreds of people loves. And after this lecture, we get to the point where 2012 was like the biggest boom of indie games industry, or like the start of the rolling snowball effect. First of all, people start understanding that big companies are more focusing on only providing games that will give them money, calling every year from back then that single-player games are dead. And we need, even if we don't want to, games that are game as services, where we need tons of paywalls or pay-to-win features, where we need tons of cosmetic, gambling, and where people will happily spend their money, which will be, for big companies, just amazing. They will set one game or two, and for the next 20 years they will be just doing upgrades for low costs. But again, people saved this, and they started picking up interest in indie games, titles that were mostly opposite of big greedy corporations and what these corporations wanted to force on players. To be clear, some of independent creators were greedy too, especially after gaining some success, but that wasn't so big problem after all. Since that times, we got like 100,000 or even millions of indie games projects available to buy, to play, to have fun. But also, there is ton of hundreds, thousands of crap games, and finding a good one is problematic. So now, can I explain what indie games is? Or what defines indie games? I think yes. In older years, concept of term indie game still
is changing
and upgrading. But back then, in times before 2012, indie games were only games made by independent creators. Today's creators can collect money from many sources, and now, like for example crowdfunding campaigns, or go straight to some publisher that will release their title, because in the past indie games were mostly only as digital products. But today you can get many of independent titles in boxes that are available on PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo, or of course PC. As today, indie games are projects or games that have budget lower or even much lower than AAA titles, where number of working staff on it were like from 1% to even huge group of people. Because currently even AA titles are treated as indie games. Maybe not everything, but still plenty of it. Even the role of publishing changed, because again, at the beginning you had to do your publishing by yourself, but currently you can go normally to any publisher and go to contract, release the game and be happy. And still it's indie game. So again, for me, indie games are smaller projects, some of them are even tiny, but still giving a lot of enjoyment and fun, where some of them, even with bigger budgets, are kinda weak. But I think that there is one factor that really currently matters and defines what indie game is. Brave idea. Industry giants are focusing on making money. They are buying studios, make some games, especially if it's about some well-known titles, or they use nostalgia card, and that's it. They don't like doing too much of experimentation, because they have shareholders that knows nothing about games. They think you are money back, and they demand return of investing in buying stock with profit. But indie games developers, this very small one like also this much bigger, are quite different. Of course they want money because they have families and dreams, but they try different, even risky ideas to be released on market. where Giant doesn't even think about that for 1 second. Indie games creators wanna also make games, not just products. So today we have an entire sea of smaller and bigger titles that are fighting sometimes even on the same level with big AAA companies. And sometimes they are winning in this race for player hearts and wallets. Thanks to small creators, we have amazing titles to play and have fun that in a world where giant companies will be ruling, projects like this would never happen to appear on the market. Whatever you like, whatever your preferences are, whatever you wanna, you can find in indie games. Trust me, somebody already made game who at least fulfill your needs in like a half or something. But still, this game will be for you. Then you ask me, of course, where to find it. If you are interested in something like this, write in a comment. If there will be many comments, probably I'm gonna make videos about this, how to find cool and fun indie games, or where to search them. And of course, you can find them in my channel, yes, where I'm doing reviews, presentations, showcase of indie games, promoting games. So yeah, you can find something interesting for you in already my videos. You can go and search it. So thank you very much for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe, write a comment, and see you later. Bye.